Hey there guys, it's Jade here and welcome back to another video. I finally have a camera. It's not mine, I am borrowing it, but that doesn't matter because now I can finally make the content that I actually want to make and upload more to YouTube. So stay tuned because there will be more videos coming now. Hooray! In this video I'm going to be talking about making some props for a Loki cosplay. One of my dream cosplays is Loki's final outfit from Thor Ragnarok. This one. I just love it so much. I think it's just mwah, chef's kiss. It's just so good. I love it so much. And I've always wanted to own it. I mean, granted, I want all of Loki's costumes because they're all mwah, but especially the final outfit in Thor Ragnarok and the one he wears in Infinity War, but we don't talk about that. I'm looking at you, Russos. I'm looking at you. It's a good job he's coming back for his TV show. I've decided to buy the costume instead of make it because the last thing I wanted to do was sew with leather. Yes, it looks good, but I definitely do not want to sew it. Ugh, no thank you. After finishing my Barbie as Odette cosplay, I'd had enough of sewing and I thought, what could I do instead? And it was to make my props for Loki because they don't involve sewing. I've been putting off making this Loki costume just because it's a dream costume and I wanted it to look as good as it possibly can. So yeah, I've been putting it off for a long time, but I thought I need a break from sewing. I still need something to do in lockdown number 2, so I made Loki's props. It's currently lockdown number 3 and I'm making his helmet. I'm sort of taking my time with it because I'm using Warbler. I've never used that before, but I'm not filming a video on that just because I'm sort of doing it as and when I feel like it and I can't be bothered to film it, to be honest, so sorry. Today I'm going to show you how I made my Tesseract and how I made Loki's second pair of knives from Ragnarok. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, Editing Jade here. Just to say that I basically forgot that this video existed. I was halfway through editing it and just stopped. So here I am a few months later, now editing it and I'm uploading it to YouTube. If for any reason throughout the video I mention something and the timing is very weird, please understand that I filmed the videos quite a while back now and it is now the future. So yeah, please don't get confused, just understand that I filmed this video a while back. Mainly it's referencing the Loki series. At the time of me filming the video we didn't really know anything, there was no, well, there might have been a trailer that came out, I'm not sure. But when I was filming the video, we didn't know anything, we didn't know any release dates, anything like that. And as of me filming this little video and editing, the first episode came out yesterday and it is incredible and I am already so excited to see what happens and watch the rest of the episodes. So yeah, that's just me clearing up if anything gets confusing. Just know that I filmed everything in the past and I'm now very late with uploading because I forgot. So anyway, please enjoy the video, ignore any weird comments I make, and look forward to new content, especially redecorating my workroom because you'll notice it's very different to the intro of this video. It's very different, it's all changed. I'll shut up now, let's carry on with the video. I started out by making the Tesseract, which in the MCU is a blue glowing cube shape which holds the space Infinity Stone. It appears in lots of the movies and is a classic prop for any Loki cosplayer. The materials I used were varying shades of blue, acrylic and white paint, some matte Mod Podge, sponges and tissue and a baseball display case. I mixed up the paint and made some varying shades of blue, making sure that it wasn't too dark. I went for lighter blues since the Tesseract glows, so I wanted to give the illusion of light. Some people when making their Tesseract use frosted glass paint and put a blue light inside, but from personal experience using little tiny lights in props and costumes, Tony Stark cosplay, sometimes the light doesn't show up well and I'm not really happy with it. If I was under big convention lights, it tends to just not show up. So I decided to use blue paint, so even when the light inside didn't show up, the cube would still look blue and Tesseract-y. Taking a sponge, I ended up using a spare makeup sponge. I applied the paint onto the inside pieces of the baseball case, making sure that it was rough, messy and random. I then took some tissue and dabbed randomly at the paint to remove some of it, to give it more of a swirled, stippled texture and to allow some of the light to shine through the clear plastic, not the paint. I did this randomly with all sides of the cube and left it to dry. Using a paintbrush, I painted a few coats of matte Mod Podge over the paint to seal it and to stop it scratching off. Once that was dry, I sanded some of the paint off that ended up on the small sides that slot together, just so I could then put the cube back together properly. To create the light inside, I used some scrap blue organza fabric and a few sets of thin, battery-operated white fairy lights. I wound the lights up into little balls. Here I'm using 2, but after I stopped filming I added another one because I didn't think it was bright enough. I wrapped them up in the blue organza as the fabric will act as a diffuser for the lights. I put it inside the cube and put the battery packs at the bottom so no one will see the shadows. And my Tesseract was done. I'm really pleased with how it looks and I just love how bright it is in the dark. For the knives, I started out by drawing a template. There are very few detailed reference pictures for the knives I wanted to make, so I worked with those pictures and ended up making a somewhat original design. These knives are the ones Loki uses in the fight against Valkyrie, and then again at the Rainbow Bridge battle at the end. That's hard to say. Rainbow Bridge battle at the end of the film. I ended up listening to the Thor Ragnarok soundtrack quite a lot, just because I really enjoy it and it really helped me concentrate. I made the handles of the knives first, which I cut from thick sheets of insulation foam. I cut the blades from thin craft foam. The ones you see here I ended up scrapping and recutting since I wasn't happy with how wonky they were. I ended up making a test blade first using some spare craft foam and insulation foam, just to see if my plan was going to work or if I had to go back to the drawing board. Thankfully, it worked. Once the handles were cut, I used sandpaper to start to shape them. I rounded them off and smoothed them out. I then sanded a few ridges into the foam to give the handles more depth so that they weren't just flat. I then went back in with more sandpaper and rounded the bottom of the handles, including the little points at the end, being careful not to snap them off. The handles have a little pattern on them, but due to there not being many good reference photos, I made my own up. I drew it out lightly with pencil onto the handles and then used the folded edge of some sandpaper to carve the lines out. It turned out really well and I was happy with the results. Using some filler, I filled in the little holes and cracks in the foam that I didn't want and used some water to smooth and thin it so it blended well with the foam. I recut the craft foam blades and drew out a few lines in the middle, which I then scored out using sandpaper. I took some thin floral wire that I bought in a craft store and bent it into shape of the lines and glued them down. This was so that when I glued the other side of the blade down, it would sit flat, and that the wire would provide some stability so the foam wouldn't just sadly flop around. From leftover insulation foam, I cut and sanded these little triangle wedge shapes which stuck onto the blades. I used the same filler method as the handles to fill and cover the edges of the blades so that they were smooth and looked like one whole piece instead of two sheets stuck together. I cut a hole into the top of the handles and glued the blades into it, so now I had two basic finished knives. I used filler to cover the seam and fill in any extra space I'd carved out, and once that was dry I glued on the little triangle wedges. Now I had to seal and prime the foam so it was ready to paint. On some scrap foam I tested some Plastidip to make sure it wouldn't eat away at the insulation foam. To use it, I sat the can into some warm, not hot or boiling, water to warm through and make it easier to apply. I taped up the handles and applied 3 coats of Plastidip to the blades before taping them up and spraying the same amount onto the handles. This is important. If you're using Plastidip or any other kind of spray paint, use a respirator mask. I haven't used one for other projects in the past, which really wasn't a good idea. Plastidip is basically a spray on rubber, so you really do not want to breathe this in. Make sure to spray it in a well ventilated area too, so I went outside. And here is what they looked like once they were dry. I retaped the handles so that I could use spray paint on the blades. I ended up with a dud can of silver spray paint, so I had to use 3 different cans of old silver spray paint to get the right amount of coverage. I only applied a couple of coats. Then I painted the blades using the same blue acrylics I used for the Tesseract. They needed a couple of coats, and I used the dark blue paint on both ends and blended it into a lighter blue in the middle of the handle. The last step was to seal the paint, so I covered each knife in a few coats of matte Mod Podge. And with that, Loki's Ragnarok knives were finished. I was incredibly happy with the result. They aren't perfect, but it was the first time in a very long time that I had made a prop weapon, and I think they're the best ones I've made to date. Thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that it comes in useful if you're wanting to make your own Loki props. Let me know in the comments below if you do use it. I want to know how it goes. So I will see you soon. Thank you again for watching. Bye! Oh, it's so good. I love this smell.